You're listening to a podcast called Gary, with me, Tom Mann.
And me, Adam Etheridge.
In this week's episode, we'll be talking holidays. Adam and I reminisce about family holidays we shared together in our childhood, and we talk about how the nature of holidays change as the years go by.
Welcome to another episode of a podcast called Gary. I'll get it right one week. We're talking about holidays.
I'll believe you, thousands wouldn't.
Well, exactly. I think it adds that element of, humanity to it when you can fluff it a little bit. But, we're talking about holidays this week, Tom. So, what are your first thoughts on the whole topic of holidays?
Well, we thought about the topic of holidays because last week you were talking about your caravan that you have at Withensea, I believe. And we have a very fond memory of certainly once, maybe it was only the once, going to my family's caravan in a place called Ulrome when we were about 16. Certainly too young to drink, but it didn't stop us from getting through my grandma's bottle of gin, or vodka was it, and then replacing the whole thing with water because we were too young to actually buy the booze.
As I remember it, we drank the booze, somehow blagged someone to buy us some more booze from the shop on site. We drank that, and then we were left with no other option but to refill with water, thinking that this would be the most sensible option. So, and and other things and games of Monopoly and things like that, where it was like one of the kind of the first holidays we were kind of left on our own. And that was part of it, almost like a rite of passage where we were just left to kind of survive, in a caravan. But it was that kind of that element of pre-adult holidays.
It was like a 16-year-old's with Nell and I.
Absolutely. Yeah,
it was an adventure, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't as what's it called? As graphic or as debauched as that. But yes, it was a very interesting holiday. I'll put it on for you. Sorry, I had a little visitor there. So
visitor. Yes.
So it was one of those moments where we're saying about in the bucket list that we wanted to try and recapture something from the kind of element of refilling the tank and spending time with each other. And it was one of those moments where it was the whole kind of, well, I've got a caravan. Let's do the whole kind of caravan journey again in a small way. And then it just brought us back those memories of other holidays that we'd spent together as just you and me, or with the pals, or with the grown-ups and the olds. So yeah, we just thought it was a good topic because so there's very, very various types of things that we've been on, and even separately, of course. So there's some times that we've just spent on holidays with our families and our friends where we've not been together, but it's all those things. That what do holidays mean? What did they mean? And what are the sort of the fun things that we can remember?
Well, as we've said, we've known each other a long time because our fathers were best friends, and so our shared experience of holidays goes back a long way, and we've had a lot of holidays together when you think of it, more than the average friends have, because we've had holidays when we were kids, when our two families would go and we would be the kids tagging along, the adults would organise it, through to, as you say, that first foray with a caravan, just you and I. Then we followed that up. After the caravan, we actually had a flat in North Yorkshire, East Yorkshire, whatever, on Filey anyway. And you and I went to that again. Yeah. So we went there, and then of course, we've done stag do's, all sorts of different stag do's, and Yeah, and even gone abroad together as adults to America, places like that. So actually, we've had quite a rich thing, and in a funny way, the ones that I've enjoyed the most have been the British ones, where it's been fairly no frills, as you say, things like Monopoly, eating too many chocolate biscuits, whiskey, and putting the world to rights. I think the one in Filey that I remember was World Cup '98. And we saw a good couple of matches there, or at least one match where England won. And even though you're Welsh, we very much enjoyed the victory, I seem to remember.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I mean, in those years, I mean, and even so to a point recently, you know, Wales was never a contender for any of these tournaments. So realistically, to watch any kind of home nation was like a victory in a way, because it was just one of those where I've also been part of my friend's experience as well. And so I think that was the other thing. There was no kind of need for the great enemy, as they sometimes call it in sport, to be sort of cast asunder, or any pleasure of their demise or anything like that. Obviously,
no, it was very joyous, and I don't say that because I was trying to needle you or anything. I say it because it was genuinely a happy time. You know, I seem to remember the weather was all right in '98, but you and I were in that flat. We certainly watched one match, really enjoyed ourselves, drunk plenty of whiskey. We probably played some cards as well. I mean, that's a bit of a subtopic, isn't it? What do you do to pass the time on holiday, especially when you're on a holiday where the weather's not terribly good, and so you have to spend it indoors? You know, how do you pass the time?
Exactly. And I think this is part of the conversation I think I may have had with you and other people about the caravan, is that I put the caravan down. The sort of the analogy of the caravan is when you haven't got much sort of signal and things like that in these sort of slightly remote places. It's a bit like when the power goes off in your house. You kind of have to stick the candles on or put the torches on, and you make best. You know, there's no TV, there's no radio, or unless you've got a battery radio, you're resorting to kind of maybe conversing with people, and back to that kind of maybe playing some cards, and some of the most fun times are those where it's much sort of simpler, and you're not sort of in that kind of usual rut or kind of sort of rhythm of normality of what you might be somewhere abroad or somewhere that you're not normally in, but still like the kids will hanker for the telly, and you kind of parents now for the phone. So again, it's sort of that's the sort of the times that I kind of quite liked, because we had 5 channels maybe at one point back in those days to watch telly, and if we didn't, when we were in the caravan, we had maybe radio. That was the most we had, and as you say, we had to make do with radio or our own tapes or CDs. I can't even remember if when was CDs come out. My God, I suppose they would have been when we were.
Well, I think by the time we got them, it was probably sort of the early 90s, early to mid 90s. Yeah. But I think they were 83 when they first came out, the very first kind of, but nobody had them back then, but they were kind of officially released. But no, I think that's the thing. It was quite funny. The phrase that you chose there was, when you lose electricity and you have to go back to basics, you have to resort to conversing with people. Exactly. I know, isn't that the pits?
Exactly.
Converse with people.
And I think that's the sort of the thing that we lose more now to the technologies and things like that. So I think, I remember it wasn't one of the holidays that you were on, but I remember going to Portugal, mum and dad and my grandmother, we used to call her Nanny, and we had no power for like 2 days. We had a big storm. We had no power for 2 days. And she was like, "It's okay. She had like one of these strip light torches. Like, this is kind of a bit futuristic," but she was very well prepared, that kind of wartime prepare for anything type woman. And, she was straight out with this. I think he was almost as well a radio. It was a radio and a strip light. She had, away in a bag, and straight away got this thing out, and we played cards. And I remember my dad's like, it was one of the first times like my dad sort of like really sort of properly played cards. But of course, in a dad's style, he didn't want to just play normal games. He was trying to teach me like 3-card brag or whatever it's called, something really complicated. And, because he was pretty much the only one who knew the rules, so he weren't one. But I think the thing was, it was those moments where it highlighted that, holidays ultimately come down to the people you spend time with, and that can kind of make or break a holiday sometimes.
Yes, very much so. We went on holiday over the summer to Spain, and that was me, my wife, and our 2 kids. And we actually did play quite a bit of cards, and certainly my daughter enjoyed it more than my son, but he still joined in. In fact, we played a few different games. So we played Shithead, which, of course, very popular amongst you and I and our friends. Mm-hmm. Was the go-to game when we were sort of in our early 20s. We played that. Not actually that popular, certainly not with my son, which I just can't get them into that game. It's a bit like Uno, isn't it? Similar to Uno in a way. But there was that. And then we also played, now what was it? We played 2 others. We played Newmarket. I don't know if you played that before.
It's one of those where, again, I can't. It's one of them card games my grandmother played quite a lot, and again, I haven't played it a lot. I mean, my Rummy and things like that. My mum used to play, and
Rummy. Was that what you just said? That's what we played. That was the other one we played, Rummy. Yeah. Or Gin Rummy. I can't remember the difference.
But yeah, that's it. These the old games. And like my gran always used to have like 2 peas and 1 peas in a purse. And we used to, basically bet and gamble with 5-card whist and all that sort of stuff. So, sort of like, the old games. But I think, in terms of holidays, it does come down to those sort of elements of, it's not, I think the modern holiday, especially before COVID, because it's so easy to kind of jet set, it's almost easier to get on a plane and go somewhere in a direction for 2 or 3 hours and be somewhere where the weather's consistent and things like that, rather than taking the risk of going to the coast or something like that, where you can have all seasons in one day, and it can be as simple as that, where all you're doing is sitting in a little tin box and getting blown from side to side. And, you just hope the hell that the weather doesn't rip something open or make something leak, or, it just gets to that point where you just sort of think, gosh, the difference between me and the outside is half an inch of aluminium. And, I know I do worry about those moments where I think people that go camping and think, oh, poor fuckers, I like the idea of camping. I just don't want the inconvenience of that sort of just kind of just generally being unkept all the time. I'm not bothered about being dirty all the time. Do you know what I mean? And it's not like you are, but you are in a way being on a camp. In that respects, it's just the kind of holiday that I just doesn't bother me anymore. That's when the only reason I used to enjoy those is when I used to get out away from the parents and go and smoke cigarettes and wacky backy with my friends back in the day. Excuse to get away from the prying eyes of adults.
Yes, we've been camping. Again, friends of ours, this. The 2 of our mates, we've gone on dad's camping trips in the last 3 years, and this was actually, again, my son Frank's his idea that we go camping with friends and their kids, and we've tried opening it up, and for various reasons, people like you, bloody awkward, just don't want to come. No, but obviously our kids are of a different ages, and so I would say, really, even your 2. Although they're getting on a bit now, but even now is probably a bit young for them to do the camping thing. But,
a couple more years, I think, they might do something where they, we could brave a couple of nights or something like that, I'm sure. But it's, I must say, I know what you mean about the camping, and you don't have your little niceties, and sometimes you don't get a terrific night's sleep, and
that you're sort of having to. One thing I noticed about camping as well is you spend an awful lot of time walking around to get anything. Yeah, everything's much harder to find. Just to go, you go to the toilet at home. I'll just go to the toilet. There's no just going to the toilet when you're camping, or just having a shower. It's always an effort, and or where have I put that again? Or I'll just search through these 3 crates to find the tin opener. So there is. I mean, I'm kind of highlighting all the things that aren't so good about camping. But having said all that, we do enjoy it. It's been good. We've been blessed by good weather. We did have a bit of rain last year, more than we have had in previous years. We actually had the heat wave a few years ago. It was like 40 degrees. That was the temperature when we arrived, and that was good because they have a swimming pool. It's not heated, but when it's 40 degrees, you don't really care. So that was good, and also the campsite that we've been going to is it's originally designed to be for the scouts, and so there's a lot of activities to do there. Or you can just chill out and not do much, but they have things like a rifle range with their air rifles, and they have a swimming pool. They have rope swings and things like this, and there's stuff to keep you entertained, and it's only like 40 minutes away from home, so it's really good. And so, if we're still doing it in a few years, obviously some of the kids are getting quite old now, but they still seem to keep wanting to go back. So, yeah, I've come back round to camping actually in that kind of context, where it's, in a way, I think it's better if it's just the way we do it, because it's just one parent from each family and their kids. And there's something about that which almost simplifies things, because I think the more adults you have, it's like the more cooks in the broth, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the other thing is as well, where you have done it, as dads, it's a nice thing as well, because there is always this kind of, I think it's element of parenting to a certain age where it's sort of, mums are very much like on the kind of the agenda of how things go, and I think it's nice when you can have some time as a dad with your parent, with your kids, and just have that sort of, not necessarily like spoil them and just let them do whatever they want sort of thing, but I think there is a simplicity to one parent dealing with the sort of the parenting, for better, for good or worse. It's those times where I think, like, especially for like with us, is there's the disagreement in terms of doing things depends on it shows more when you're having when you're in strife, if there's a disagreement or there's elements of the parenting that are struggling maybe at that time. If you're both stressed out, it magnifies it, because you sort of you're not your best selves with each other in that point. I think when you're going off as equals, as sort of like all dads or all mums or something like that, there's a very similar kind of camaraderie to the whole process. So I think there is that. I think I would enjoy the camping in a way. I think it's and I think the kids probably would to a point, but I think my kids are just, as they say, at that age where they just they're just not willing to kind of muck in a bit. They're just a bit kind of soft still, and I think they
are quite young, really, for camping. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's not for you have to sort of, I don't know. I can see why, if my kids were that age as well, I think I'd be a bit hesitant. How old are they both now? I know I should know this. I'm rubbish.
5 and 7.
Yeah, yeah,
about 5 and a half. Yeah, so I think they're at a stage where potentially they're going to sort of toughen up a bit when they're sort of doing things with school as well. They're going to experience those things, and I just think it's just I have enough problems taking him to camp, to the caravan. There are things like that where it's like, let's go to the beach, and they're like, oh, I don't want to go to the beach. And I'm sure the same sort of conversations I had with my parents when I was like, oh, I just want to watch telly. And
oh God, do you remember? I remember that holiday that I was on, and we were in Wales, not your part of Wales, but Harlech. Harlech Castle. If you've heard of that, but it was popular with a few of my parents' circle, including my auntie, because in fact they used to own a place there, but it was for golf. There's quite a good golf course, and so that's why they kind of were attracted to that part of the world. And I'll be honest with you, for kids, there's fuck all to do. That was my memory of it anyway, but there probably was. But I remember but there was a TV there, and I was perfectly happy as long as there was a TV. And so I remember my dad and this golf friend of his, he's sort of coming round, and basically my dad talking about me in front of me, saying what an awkward bugger I was. Because he basically tried to get me to this medieval castle thing, and I was like, no, I just want to watch Blackadder.
I think that does sort of sound one of those sort of elements you have as the dynamics where we was always classed as like the wimp team, weren't we? We were always kind of like your dad, so your mum, my dad, you and me were always on the kind of like didn't want to go on the roller coasters, didn't really want to do things that were kind of potentially a bit scary, so we were classed as the wimp team, as your dad would call it. And it was just sort of, I think as we got to sort of a little bit older, when I think we were in America, and we started to be like, we don't want to be on the wimp team anymore. We want to go on the roller coasters, and then that sort of added an extra dynamic of annoyance to them, because it was like two parents then had to deal with four kids, and like my dad and your mum were just like, whoopee, this is it. We don't even have to worry about going on roller coasters. Don't have to worry about even entertaining too much.
Chill now and have a coffee.
Exactly. But yeah, I did. There's those arguments of trying to get my kids to do things, and stuff that they knowingly enjoy, but they sort of I think at the moment, or I think the kids of today are sort of, it's just, they just don't see the payoff for doing something. So they know the effort required to get the enjoyment just seems so great for them that you just have to make them do it, and then they're fine. So taken to the beach and you like make a sandcastle. I'm not making a sandcastle, and then within minutes they're kind of mucking around and they're doing their own thing, and that's it. That's they want to do stuff, and before then it was like we go on the beach and they'd be like, I'm cold and wet, I want to go home. Like, just set up, just gonna have to tough it out a bit. Whereas like recently, couldn't get them away from the beach, but getting them there initially, it was hard, hard task. And
I think we were probably the same. We don't remember it, of course, as well, because it was a long time ago. But that example in Harlech is one where I just remember I was awkward bugger. At the time, I didn't think I was being. I just wanted to watch Blackadder, and it was like, no, I don't want to go to some medieval castle dinner bullshit with a joust or whatever. That sounds boring. I mean, now I'd be like, yeah, get in. That sounds really good. But yes,
I remember saying to you when you were on holiday that something very common to my memory of Spanish holidays was the sort of I said to you, didn't I text you and said, oh, maybe there's a medieval experience you could go to, and you were like, oh, I've forgotten about those sort of things. And it is ridiculous. They are sort of still around, but it is ridiculous because it's kind of it's sort of like eating a big chicken drumstick and doing it's all that kind of thing, like making kids like eat it with their hands. My kids would just be freaking like, I'm not touching food like that, I'm not eating food like that. And whereas I suppose there was fussy eaters in our time, but still you just kind of got on with it, didn't you? And I think kids just sort of did more so then. There's so little snowflakes now that I think there's a lot of kids that just be like, are horrified by the idea of eating food with their hands, and how I get to wash my finger in a bowl of water, and having to, tough
like
it
Back
in
to the Future too, isn't it? You have to use your hands.
hands. Yeah, well, exactly.
It's like a kid's toy. No, but yes, but you enjoy. You look back on those medieval things fondly. The thing is, I was my own worst enemy, because I always look back and go, I never went to a medieval castle experience. Yeah, it's my bloody fault, because I was the one that refused to go. But did you enjoy them? Do you remember them well?
Well, it was one of those sort of weird things, because like I think when we went to Tenerife once, there wasn't a lot to do. I think that was the only thing that was sort of in the vicinity, so it became like a bit of a kind of a family kind of funny thing. There was like every time we went on somewhere on holiday, it was like, oh look, a medieval experience, medieval joke. So it was kind of like that sort of tongue in cheek kind of, should we go to yet another one? So I think we went to a couple, but at the same time, it's that kind of thing that sticks in my head from those sort of holidays. And I remember that particular holiday, we'd gone in a taxi, and the guy was sort of like just being particularly kind of egregious, and he didn't speak any English until he was there to the price. And my dad goes, "Oh, how much?" And he's like, "How much was it?" It was expensive. It was one of those. My dad was like, "No chance." He gave him however many pesetas or whatever it was at the time, and I remember my dad just going like, "Up yours, Pedro," as he sped off, sort of thing. He like just gave him the rods, and it's like just so uncharacteristic for my dad. It was that kind of like my dad was always reserved, and one of the first times where it was just like
He went all Clark Griswold on you.
Yeah, he did, and I think there was moments like that. But yeah, I think going back to sort of early holidays, especially as kids, there was those summers that used to come and see us, and it was lovely to be able to kind of do those, spend time in that very quaint, quiet kind of town that I've got, and just kind of amble around, go on walks on the rivers and things like that. Very, kind of very sort of boring-y kind of thing, but very of its time. That sort of we could just go and just adventure and stuff like that. And
I think it comes back to what you were saying earlier, Ads, is that it's very much about the people that you're with. And so, actually, if you were maybe on your own, because it was your own town, you're very familiar with it, maybe you would have found, doing the same things as we did together less entertaining. But I certainly look back on those times extremely fondly. Like, actually, those times that as I said, I mentioned this last week, didn't I? When I stayed at your parents again with my kids last summer, they're some of my happiest kind of summer holiday childhood memories. Actually, it was just so much fun going to yours, and as you say, just walking by the river. We'd go and see you, have a little wander to your parents' garage, wouldn't we, where they worked, and we'd have a little walk around there, and just maybe rent a movie, see something new on VHS. Maybe go to the movies.
Well, that was the other thing. Oh, I've just disconnected my camera. Let me just put that back in. I think there was the other thing where we had. Let me just put that back on there a second. Can I get that back up? Start camera.
Well, we have a bit of an interruption in Adam's live streaming. I've got a device is not connected message, and he is not in the call right now, but I'm sure that he will sort all that out. Meanwhile, I'm just going to continue to talk and talk about those times in Usk that he was just talking about. And it was absolutely fantastic doing those holidays together, because it was always an adventure. It was probably about 3.5 hours away for me, I would say. The way Adam drives, he probably does it in 3 when he goes there. But it was great. And I was always made to feel very welcome by Adam's family. Not just his mum and dad, but also Adam's extended, his Adam's grandparents. your mum's mum and dad, don't know if you can hear me, Ads, but of course they used to live right next door to your house, didn't they, Reg and Gwen? Can you hear me, dude? He's looking at me like he can't hear me, so I think he's still setting his mic and headphones up and everything. But yeah, Reg and Gwen lived next door to. Yes, I can hear you as well. I can see you, eh? Yeah, so they lived next door to Adam, his mum's mum and dad, and they were just such a nice couple. And they were always so welcoming and friendly. And we used to go over to Adam's, to Reg and Gwen's, and Gwen would cook us a nice hot cooked breakfast in the morning, and that was very good indeed, with the full works fried bread and all that stuff. That was good. You'd always have Adam would always have little debates with his granddad and with Reg and Gwen, as you used to call them, didn't you? Can you hear me now, mate? Yeah, you used to have these little debates, and he sort of it was funny to see Adam with his grandparents compared with my own, because the way that Adam always was, especially with Reg and Gwen, because he knew them so well because they lived next door, is he could have these little kind of he could be a little bit more honest and confrontational with them if they were discussing kind of. I remember his nan once saying the Beatles were virtually from Wales because Liverpool's pretty much right next door to Wales. And Adam saying, "What on earth are you talking about, Gwen?" And Reg had some fantastic stories. He was actually, in fact, I think they both worked in prisons as prison wardens. Adam will correct me on this when he joins the call again, but Reg actually had some wonderful, really good anecdotes about his time as a prison warden. And I seem to remember there was one that he talked about when he was transferring the craze to somewhere, and he got into a bit of spot of bother, and he was, he was in a bit of danger, but he just says at that moment in time, he just had to keep cool and not lose it. Because he knew that as soon as he showed fear to these fearsome kind of hardened men, then he was done for. Adam, I don't know if you can hear me now. I'm just talking about Reg and Gwen.
So, can you hear me now?
I can. Can you hear me?
Good. I can't hear you for some reason.
Oh, dear. Yes, I think that's on your end. I'm hoping it's on your end because nothing's changed from my end. But this is the
connecting me and
this is the reality of a live stream.
How very bizarre!
I feel like Peter O'Hanrahan on what is it, the Day Today or something. Yeah, it's quite amusing. It is for me anyway, because I can't hear a word you're saying. No.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you now. So
okay, you're obviously on a different microphone. You're sounding a bit more roomy now. You're sounding less closely mic'd.
I'm now on the camera mic for some reason. So I was lacking a bit of power there, John. So I've now flipped to just using a bit more old tech. So at least we are back up and running. So I overheard something about you talking about Liverpool there. So what was that about?
Oh, what I was saying was that when I used to go to your place in Wales on holiday, in the summer holidays, we would spend quite a lot of time with Reg and Gwen, who lived next door to you. And I said that I always find it fascinating because the relationship you had with them was just so different to the way that I was with my grandparents, which is quite reserved and very, very polite. I mean, don't get me wrong, I had a good relationship with them, but yours was a bit more, you could have a bit of banter, I would say. You kind of like, we're quite challenging, and you called them out if they said things that you thought were complete bullshit. And one of the things that I remember Gwen saying was something about the Beatles basically being from Welsh, because Liverpool was quite close to Wales, so they were pretty much Welsh. You were just like, Gwen, that's complete bullshit.
Yeah, just pure Welsh logic, is that whole kind of like, it's kind of sort of tangible, link to something that was, trying to sort of validate being Welsh. And they see my grandfather being English, and I sort of partly Irish in that respect, was always a kind of like sort of one foot in either sort of side of the coin, and so trying to be sort of diplomatic about the whole thing. But yeah, my grandparents were, you know, the great thing about them, they were very they're just very kind of welcoming kind of people. I remember seeing, like, you know, the holidays when you used to come down, and we, you know, even if we did brave sleeping in a tent, you know, Reg would come down with a cup of tea in the morning and telling us that breakfast would be ready in a, you know, a matter of minutes, and we'd stroll up the garden from the bottom of the garden to the house where full cooked breakfasts. I mean, the people used to, sort of friends used to come and basically because they used to like my grand's breakfasts and things like that. So there used to be that element of the experience was Reg and Gwen's calf. So, you know, there's those parts of the holidays where in some respects it was nice to have people come and sort of, you know, come and stay, and we'd have those sort of moments where they were that kind of sort of almost like that B&B element where they, you know, you could stay at Reg and Gwen's, and you know, everything would be laid on for you, sort of thing. So you know, there was like it was like little holidays in a way, by next door neighbour. but
yeah, and I was saying the other thing that I enjoyed was Reg's anecdotes about, was he a prison warden? Have I got that right?
He used to be a prison guard, yeah.
Yeah, I remember he definitely said that he looked after at least one of the Crays. I think it was just one. I don't think it was both, actually, Ronnie or Reggie.
Yeah, he had experience with one of them, I believe. Yeah, so yeah, he'd kind of, and also I think he'd also experienced one of the kind of one of the last guys who was sort of on, not necessarily the last, but one of the last guys who were on death row before they stopped it, I believe. So he kind of. You know, it was one of those sort of, I think, again, later on in life, he's talked about all sorts of things that would have possibly made people slightly less kind to, you know, humanity, and probably would have, you know, you'd seen and experienced some of the things that these lads did in the war. He was a big advocate for some of these boys that were called traitors and were shot and shot as deserters and things like that because they were just scared boys, you know. So he was a big advocate for pardoning a lot of these boys. And you know, they said, I think he's just that type of person who managed to kind of find the half full cup about most things, and yeah, they were just very lovely people. So yeah, it was, you know, for me, having people when they did come and stay, to experience that sort of that part that I was very blessed with on a daily basis.
Well, listen, mate, it's been a pleasure, but your audio is a little bit difficult to hear now. So I think that we're going to call this one a little bit early, and hopefully we can get the old microphone back up to speed next week. And I shall bid you adieu until next Wednesday. Absolute pleasure as always, mate. You take care.
Take care, buddy. All the best.